Hey, it's Marie Forleo, and you are watching Marie TV, the place to be to create a business and life you love. And I am so excited I can barely contain myself because today's guest is someone that I've admired for so long. He's impacted tens of millions of lives all around the world, and he's written an incredible new book, which we're going to talk about today. Tony Robbins is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. For more than 37 years, millions of people have enjoyed the warmth, humor, and the transformational power of Mr. Robbins' business and personal development events. He's the nation's #1 life and business strategist. He's called upon to consult and coach with some of the world's finest athletes, entertainers, Fortune 500 CEOs, and even presidents of nations. Robbins is a founder of or partner in more than a dozen companies in industries as diverse as a 5-star island resort in Fiji to custom 3D printed prosthetic limbs. Through the Anthony Robbins Foundation and his matching funds, Tony feeds 4 million people per year in 56 countries. He's also initiated programs in more than 1,500 schools, 700 prisons, and 50,000 service organizations and shelters. He lives in Palm Beach, Florida. Tony, it is so amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
So I think I told you this way back when you interviewed me for the New Money Masters. You know, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. When I was in my early 20s, I went to Unleash the Power Within.
Yes.
And you made such an impact on me, and it's influenced everything I've done personally and everything in my business. And I just want you to hear like who you are, what you do, how you serve. It makes such a huge difference, and it means the world to me to have you here today.
Oh, that is so sweet of you.
So
thank you for that.
Let's get started, because one of the things I admire so much about you is your energy and your passion and your stamina. I mean, you've been doing this for over 3 decades, and I know everybody watching
Actually getting closer to 4
which is awesome. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I so admire is I feel like you keep getting better. You keep doing more. You
Yes.
keep serving on a higher level. And
Yes.
from a personal, just stamina standpoint, tell us a little bit about what you do every day. What are your habits? How do you keep yourself at this high level of service?
Well, I think there's the physical side of it, which I do the equivalent of an ultra marathon every weekend. I do 52 hours. On the last day, I did 26.5 miles. The previous day, 22 miles. So just the physical side, you have to be in incredible shape. And I'm in better shape physically today, both my endurance, my muscular strength, and so forth, than when I was 25, which is wonderful. And so I do certain things for that. But I think I should mention first, what's even more important is the psychological, spiritual side of things, because I think energy comes first, not from your body. It doesn't come from eating. It doesn't come from sleeping, because I've gone without those things for long periods of time and still been able to deliver. It comes from having a mission. It comes from something that you're being pulled by, not something you're pushing on. Those are 2 forms of motivation. You can push yourself to do things, and there's only so much you can push yourself to do. But if you're pulled, if there's something that you want to serve that's greater than yourself, there's something that excites you, if there's something that you're about, something you're made for, then there's a level of energy that most people would never dream of. And we all have that, but most of us don't connect to it and unleash it. So every day I connect and unleash that every single day. I don't hope it's going to be there, even though I know it will be, even though it's there. I don't take it for granted. And so I start out with my day by a process I do called priming. And what priming is, it's not a meditation, but it has meditative qualities. And what I do is I sit down. The first thing I do in the morning, I go and I jump in a hot tub or a hot water type of experience, and then I go to freezing water. All my homes, I'm fortunate enough to have multiple homes, that I go, one of them I have a river I get to jump in. You've been there.
Yeah.
There are other places I have these cold plunges. And I do that to train my nervous system to go from 0 to 60 like that. Every muscle, every nerve in your body, every organ gets, when you hit 57-degree water, it hits. And so it's just my mental discipline. Then the second thing I do is I prime. And priming is I sit down and I do a minimum of 10 minutes, because my mindset is, if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life.
Right.
So there's no excuse. So every day, sit down, and what do? I do 3.5 minutes where I do an explosive breathing pattern, a pattern that changes my biochemistry. And after I've done that, 30 of these intense breaths 3 times, I close my eyes and I'm kind of in an altered state, and I focus first for 3.5 minutes on just everything in my life, at least 3 things that I'm really, truly grateful for. And I don't do that in a hokey way. I don't do it in a mental way. I step into my body and feel it, and I make sure at least one of those things is something really simple. The wind against my skin, the look on my son's eyes or daughter's eyes, something that is just very fundamental, but I really I cultivate that feeling of gratitude, of appreciation for those feelings. And I do it for 3.5 minutes. Then I do 3.5 minutes where I do this process of focusing on healing, strengthening, and serving. And I start in a circle, starting with myself, and then I go through all the people in my life and associates, and I just send love to them. Again, it may sound corny, but to me, it's a part of what I'm here for, and it's a part of cultivating that energy, that healing and strength energy, and strengthening my passion, my appreciation, my insights, my capacity, my endurance. And then I do the last 3 minutes are what I call 3 to Thrive, which is what is it that I really want to make happen? And sometimes I do that over what I'm going to do for the next 6 months or month, and sometimes it's today. I shake it up. But I see and feel and own that those things are done. And that starts, pretty much my day between those 2 items. And, then I have my workouts and things that I do of that nature.
Yeah. And how about eating wise? Has that changed for you a lot over the years?
It's pretty simplistic. I'm very simple. I eat a salad and I have some protein. I have fish or I'll have turkey bacon. I don't eat red meat or chicken, but those are the things that I have usually in the morning, and my afternoon, evening meals are pretty simple as well. But, before I met my wife, Sage, she's been the greatest gift of my life. When we first met, she's a phlebotomist and a nutritionist and acupuncturist, so I thought this is going to be the easiest thing in the world. And I'll never forget, we went on this date and she had a wheatgrass juice, and I was like, wow, this is going to be so easy, man. This is awesome. And then she ordered a hot fudge sundae, and I was like, what in the hell are you doing? And she goes, eating, you bastard. I should give some term around bastard that I was like too rules driven. And so she had this whole thing, you zig and then you zag. So I do that with her now. I do enjoy other aspects of life, but when I first met her, I noticed she zigged a lot more than she zagged, or the other way around, I don't know which one it was, but it's been a nice balance in my life. So I enjoy food and things of that nature, but I use food mostly as fuel because life gives me so much juice. I'm not looking to get it out of food usually.
And how about, because I know for me, my mind can go and I have so much excitement and so much passion that at night, sometimes winding down. Do you have a wind down process?
My wife would say no. I say yes, she would say no. My wife loves sleep.
Yeah.
My wife can sleep 8 hours. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. To me, it's like sleep when you die. So that was one of the first things in our relationship that was a bit challenging, because I'd want to get up and just go. I'll never forget, we were in Fiji, and it's like, even there, we're supposed to be on vacation, it's our home. I'd jump up at 6 a.m, and she's like, where the hell are you going? I go, start my day, run up the mountain, do it. She goes, get in bed, I'll show you how to start your day. It's like, okay, now that's a better way to start my day.
Totally.
But now what I've done is I get in bed with her, because she's a lady. If you get up in the middle of the night, where are you going? China. Where do you think I'm going? It's 3 a.m. I'm going to the bathroom, So I've learned to get my work done in bed beside her, and then she goes to sleep. But I watch silly movies. I watch things to let my brain disappear. Reading does not slow me down, because then I start incorporating and using it. My mind goes crazy. I'm underlining everything. But I'll watch cartoon type movies like Family Guy or something to knock my brain out, quite frankly. Or I'll watch some silly series, I don't know. I'm thinking of now the different ones. What is it? Revenge or something of that nature. Something that my brain can just truly let go, and that's how I do it for the most part.
Awesome. So, you've worked with presidents. You worked with people like Serena Williams and, one of the greatest investors in the world, Paul Tudor Jones. When you're called in to work with these incredible folks, how do you start to prepare yourself? Like, what are the questions that you ask to start to go in to serve at that level?
Well, they're different for everybody, obviously, but what I try to do, if I was trying to look at it from a universal perspective, I guess what I really want to know before I get there as much as I can is everything I can about the person. And I do that because I really want to know, what do they want? What do they want of their life? What's their mission? What are they after? And what do they fear? What are their concerns? Because I believe life is found in the dance between what you desire most and what you fear most. And if I know those two edges of a person, I know a lot. And then I dig under and try to learn as much as I can from other people about whatever the challenge may be. And then I go prepared to just learn from the person directly. But I want to know as much as I can before I go in there. Then I take all that I think I know, and then I see what's really real when I meet them. And I'm digging in to discover what's the challenge, what do they perceive it is. And usually, if I were to grossly generalize, if you're going to help somebody create a breakthrough, it all comes down to 3 areas. Either they've altered their strategy. We all have strategies, a specific way of succeeding, and sometimes we alter it, whether it be in sports or whether it be in finance or any other area. We forget something, we lose a little edge, we drop something out, and then it becomes a bad habit. Or sometimes it's a change in our beliefs. Like, you may have done something for decades and been really successful, but now I know one gentleman who's a good friend of mine that, had 52 Academy Award nominations, and he said to me one day, he said, if I make one more freaking movie, I'll kill myself. He's just like, I don't want to make a movie, I don't want an Academy Award, I don't want any of these things, And it's just like he's satiated. And so sometimes when people get satiated, they lose their hunger, they shift their beliefs. And when you change a belief, you change your biochemistry. When you change your belief, you change the way you execute. You change everything. And we all develop stories. And sometimes stories are empowering, and sometimes the mental stories are disempowering. So I'm listening for those. I'm digging for those. And then I also look at their state. Because you could do the same exact action from a place of being pissed off or from a place of playfulness, and the same action's not going to get you the same result. And so I'm looking for that quality of what's going on in them. And then I look and try to find out what it was like before. So with Paul Tudor Jones, I went back and I watched videos of him when he was at his best. And I saw how he used his body and the way he moved, and I saw him now sitting still and kind of slumped over, and he'd broken his leg, and he had talked at a different tempo. So I look at biochemically what's happening, physiologically, I look at psychologically what's going on, and then I look at structurally what they're doing. And then I develop a plan to help them get back to where they were and beyond, to better performance than they had before.
Incredible. The other thing that I was fascinated I wanted to ask you so bad, you probably accomplish more than most people do in, I don't even know a time frame. And of course, you get to talk with people who are at the highest level of their game. When it comes to productivity, what do top performers know that a lot of people just don't? What are we missing?
Well, I think the best performers are focused on outcomes and not activities. If you try to manage your to-do list in the world we live in today, where most of us have multiple roles, we're trying to be a great business person, a great husband or wife, great father, great community member, or whatever, there's just so many roles, you can never get all your to-dos done. And what helped me in my life was I started at one point saying, I'm not going to let myself fail every day. I'm not going to pick a to-do list, and I'm not going to not write a list so that I don't fail. I need to focus on what matters most. I needed to organize my life into categories where I say, these are the most important outcomes, and then I know why I'm going to do it. If you know what you really want, the target, and you know why, you have the focus and you have the fuel, then how to get there, there's so many ways to get there. And then the most important thing I think that the most productive people do is we leverage what we do. We don't delegate. Delegation is I give it to you, and then when it doesn't work out, I'm pissed at you. Leverage is I empower you. If I'm leveraged, I'm still part of that, and I'm going to make sure you succeed. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to make sure before the deadline I touch base with you. I'm going to make sure you have the resources to succeed. But what I do is empower people. Go, here's the outcome, here's the why. I get you and I aligned with the outcome and the why. You figure out how you want to do it. I'm open. You want to brainstorm with me? I'll do it. You probably come up with better ideas than I do. And when you empower people to come up with their own how, and they know what and why, you can get the job done 100 times faster, especially if you get a group of people. I'm a big believer that early in my life, I thought I was such a smart person. I'm going to solve all this stuff. Part of it was being responsible, and part of it is ego that we all have inside ourselves if we've succeeded to a certain extent. I said, this is bullshit. You know what? Instead of one person solving 12 problems, I want 12 people to solve one problem. And I developed that practice, and I began to find that people that many people thought weren't going to contribute had insights nobody else had. I really got it from Steve Wynn. Steve Wynn's a dear friend of mine, and he's rebuilt Las Vegas, one of those brilliant men I know, multi-billionaire. And Steve really learns the most from the bellmen, from the people that would never make it into the C-suite. He learns what customers are feeling, what they're experiencing, how to have an impact, what needs to be changed, because these people are on the front lines. So I'm a big believer that you need leverage. And if you're just starting out in business, I know a lot of people that will probably watching your shows are watching you because you're a successful businesswoman who's built your own entrepreneurship. You've done so many great things. I think in the very beginning, the hard thing is you think you can only do it yourself, and then there's only so many hours, and you've got kids and family and friends, and how do I do it all? The answer is you hire someone. You trade with someone. You trade them for 2 hours. That's what I did in the beginning. Because I'll never forget, I was just really young in my career, very in the early days, and I was running to get to the dry cleaners so I could get my only 2 suits. Because if I didn't get them, then the place closes, then I can't get on the plane, and running to the airport, sweating like crazy. I'm a sweater anyway. Right? It's like sweating like this, trying to get in the door, and it's like, what is wrong with this picture? I could be doing something that's so productive, and I'm standing in line at the dry cleaning place, and it's just nuts. And so I was really young, I was like 17, 18, 19, I don't know what I was. And I said, I'm gonna hire somebody. 2 hours a day, that's what I had to start with. And then it was 4 hours. And so my view is I don't do anything that someone else can do better, and I don't do anything that isn't the highest and best use of my time. Now, when I say that, that's gross generalization. There are things I still will do. But for the most part, by finding people and getting clear on outcomes and the why, what I call RPM, you gotta know the result, You got to know the purpose, and then you got to have a massive action plan. And the plan can change. But that RPM, the stronger the RPMs, the faster that car is going to move. And I try to do that, not just through myself, but through other people.
Beautiful. So last thing I want to talk about before we dive into the monster book, which I can't wait to get to, is this idea of slumps. I know a lot of times you're called in when someone's, either hit a plateau or they're having a tough time. So 2 questions. A lot of folks that write in, they'll ask me questions or they'll just comment on the blog and they find themselves in a tough spot. Maybe they've experienced a certain level of success and like you said with your friend, Peter, it's just like, I don't want this anymore. I don't know what I want next. Any common patterns or things that you can share about slumps and how we can support ourselves to get out of them?
Well, most people hit plateaus, and the most important thing when you hit a plateau is not to be pissed off and stressed out about it, because stress won't make it better. It's also not to take it lightly and go, oh my God, this doesn't matter. It's that delicate balance where you say, okay, how do I get from where I am to where I really want to be? And if you don't put the emotional charge on it, it's easier, but that's easier to say and harder to do. The pattern I see in slumps, whether it be an athlete or a financial trader or an actor or any of that nature, is number one thing that causes a slump usually is you get too comfortable. When you start doing something and you're really successful, a lot of people lose their hunger. And if you ask me, what is the single most important element of any human being that separates their level of success from the rest of the world? It's hunger. It isn't intelligence, as valuable as that is. There are people that are incredibly intelligent, can't fight their way up a paper bag. You show me somebody who's not only hungry but doesn't lose their hunger, they will dominate everything. And you see that in the greatest sports stars, the greatest entertainers, the ones that they're insatiable. And because of that, you like being around them because there's this energy about them, this passion about them, and very few people maintain that. And you lose your hunger, you go into a slump. You get overconfident. Another pattern that happens that gives people a slump is when something changes in their world that they're not prepared for. Like, I've been doing this forever, and oh my God, now my relationship's messed up. Or, I've been working hard and being a lawyer, and now my wife's upset, her husband's upset with me. What do I got to do here? And what it does is it throws people off their rhythm. And so I try to figure out what's happening in their environment and show them how they can win in both categories simultaneously. A third one is when people do something where they get mad at themselves, kind of like a Tiger Woods, and then he's got all the skill in the world, nothing changed in his skill, but for that year and a half or whatever it was, he was beating himself up, and in that state, it's kind of a self-sabotage. And so depending on what form I find, I enter in and make the changes, and there are almost always changes, again, in the psychology of that person, the emotion of that person, because we have these great minds. Everybody's got a great mind, or at least available great mind. But we're emotional creatures. And we forget that because we live in a society that tries to value thought much more than emotion, because emotion is scary for us. Emotion can come really fast. And so some people try to avoid it at all costs. Other people are overwhelmed by it. My view is that emotional intelligence is a wonderful thing, but I much prefer emotional fitness. Intelligence is a capability. Fitness is a state of readiness. And what I do is I train myself to always be ready, and that makes you execute. And I think too many people settle for, I know this, as opposed to I'm doing this. And I try to train myself and others to be in that state of readiness all the time, because that's where life is really fulfilled at the highest level, I think.
I do too, agree 100%. So let's move on to this monster book, which it is a monster in the best way. It's the most beautiful thing. So do we have a copy that we can kind of bring in? I just want to hold this thing up because it is so awesome. So Tony, I got the galley from your team, which it's like, all right, y'all, you're seeing it right here. We're going to talk about this now. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that every human being needs to get this book. They need to read it for their family, for their friends, and most importantly, the last couple chapters about service. I was in tears. I loved every bit of it. My copy is highlighted cover to cover. I've already taken action on a lot that's in the book.
Yes.
This is your first book in 20 years.
Yes.
Why this topic? Why now? And what makes it different than all the other money books that are out there?
Well, one reason I haven't written a book is I hate writing. Just being honest. I'm on a plane about every 4 or 5 days. I go to 15 countries. I see 250,000 people a year. I love the live event. I love the spontaneity. You get to do something new constantly. You get to see what's really going on with a human being. And writing is an isolated, by yourself process that God bless the people that do that stuff. But I got pushed over the edge because there's only a few subjects in life that really affect the quality of your life, right? There's your body. There's clearly your relationships, your emotions, and money is one of those places. And I've shared with people a lot about this, and I grew up with in a very tough environment financially. We had no money. There were times, our car was repossessed. There were times we had no food. So, and it didn't last, but it was one of those places where you had that uncertainty all the time. And so when 2008 happened, That's what pushed me over the edge. Because when I started seeing so many people losing their homes, losing half of what they saved for their whole life, and then I kept thinking, well, the government's going to do something because this is a raw, horrific situation that's been brought about by a small number of people. By 2010, when nothing had been done, I was mad, and I was reading every article, I was watching every documentary, and the final one that just pushed me over the edge was called Inside Job. I don't know if you saw it, but
I have it ordered on Netflix.
Okay, yes,
yeah.
It's Academy Award, won the Academy Award. Matt Damon did the voiceover, but what's amazing is they systematically showed who specifically virtually destroyed the world economy, and then showed that the punishment they got is not only all of us bailing them out, but they were put in charge of turning the economy back around and giving more money to this one again. So at the end of this film, you understand what happened, but you have one or two emotional responses depending upon your personality. Either you want to kill somebody, you're so angry, or you're depressed because there wasn't one solution to the whole thing. It's a beautiful documentary, but not one solution. I'm a solution guy, so I was like, something's got to be done. I know I'm not the only solution, but I have a unique gift. I have access. Because most people don't know, they think of me the motivational, positive thinking guy. That's never what I've been. I've been a strategist my whole life, and Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 traders in the history of the world, has been my client for 21 years. Literally every single day, he emails me, I measure him a variety of things, I see him face to face. I've been with him side by side in the tech crash in 2000, in 9/11, when he went through the subprime crisis, 2008, fall in gold, and he's made money every single year for 21 years. And even beyond me, his firm has made money for 28 years. So it isn't just me, it's Paul. And I've learned from him so much over those decades. And I just thought, if I didn't just interview him, what if I interviewed 50 of the most brilliant financial minds that in the history of the world that are alive today? Let me interview them. Let me find out, can the average person really still win? And if so, how? Let me get, not some talking head on television telling you the same BS about go put your money in some 12% per annum mutual fund that's never existed for 10, 15 years, but the truth. And so I began this 4-year journey, and I was blown away. My average interview was scheduled for 45 minutes. They went 3 hours, some of them 3.5 hours, 4 hours. And people became incredibly generous in what they shared. And they shared things that they've never shared before. And I put them into a 7-step process so that whether you're a millennial that just got out of college and got a bunch of college debt saying, how will I ever get around this? I'll show you how to get financially free. You're a baby boomer and you lost a bunch of money in 2008 and you didn't get back in the market. I'll show you what you can do. You're a very sophisticated investor and you want to know what Ray Dalio does that it's never been revealed about, I'll show you what he does. And so I'm real proud of it. And that, you've seen the level of endorsement I have from the highest level of people in finance on the earth is pretty extraordinary. It's because it's really their work. It's not mine.
I had so much fun reading it, and honestly, I was intimidated by a 600-plus book because I knew we were doing this interview, and I prepare as much as I humanly. I'm like, all right, I'm going to speed read, but digest everything.
Yes.
And one of the things in the beginning, when you start breaking down the myths,
yes,
I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker with how much the general public, how much people don't know and how they're taking advantage of. So I wanted to ask you, was there one in particular that just totally pissed you off? There was a ton. I know there's 9 myths in the book.
I put the 9 most abusive ones in there. They're there. Here's what I'd say. I want to mention one of the myths, though, to start with. Not a myth, but a step. I want everybody who's watching to remember one thing. The biggest myth you have, not the one that's been sold to you, that hurts you is the average person thinks finance is so complex because, frankly, the industry tries to make it sound complex. They use words that you don't know, so you don't know what to do. What does this mean? And so what happens is we just give them our money and say, deal with it, and we don't realize that system has been set up. It's not an evil system. It's set up by corporations that are looking to maximize profit for those corporations. They're not looking out for the investor because this investor is second, and we think we're first, and we're not. So the first piece is you got to know that you can't wait till you have a ton of money to start investing and think, I'm not an investor. What you got to do is say, rather than my Apple phone, let me own Apple stock. Let me own a piece of all the best companies, not just Apple. I've got to become an owner or I'll always be in scarcity. If you can invest in business, even a small amount, you can grow. And I don't care how small it is, but you got to automate it. There's a gentleman named Theodore Johnson who is amazing. He worked for UPS, started as a driver, never made more than $14,000 total in a year. That was his highest salary in a year. In his old age, he's worth $70 million. And how did he do it? All he did was what I teach is the first step is you got to take a percentage of what you earn and pretend it's a tax. You're never going to see that money again. You automate it, it goes straight to the investment account, and you never see it as money you can spend. He did that with 20%. He said, I can't save 5. Somebody in his family said, if there was a tax, you'd pay it, and they made it 20%. When you save 20% and you compound it, its numbers are incredible. So I show people how to do that. But then the problem is, if you do that first step, but you don't do the second step, which is become an insider,
yes,
and understand the rules of the game, then the old adage is a person with money meets a person with experience, the person with experience ends up with your money. I mean, that's how it works. So I'll give you 2 or 3 of the myths real fast. One, this myth that someone says, give me your money and I'm gonna beat the market. It's just a lie. Warren Buffett made it clear it's a lie. Ray Dalio, one of the greatest investors in history. David Swenson, who has taken Yale's money, $1 billion, and converted it to $24 billion in 2 decades, the greatest institutional investor in the world. They've all said it. Warren Buffett flat out said today, he said, listen, in my will, 90% of my money, all that money does not go with any mutual fund, it goes straight into the index. What the index is you get a piece of all the largest companies in the world, but it costs almost nothing to get in. Because over any 10-year period of time, 96% of mutual funds will not even match the market. Now you're paying for a mutual fund. What this means is you hire someone because you say, I have a family, I have a business, I have a life, I'm not an investor. I'm gonna hire someone who's a professional. It makes sense, they would do better than me. Unfortunately, that's wrong. Because what happens is 4% of them will beat the market, but it's not the same 4%. Mm-hmm. So your chances of finding the right one, have you ever played blackjack?
Yes.
So if you play blackjack, everybody knows you play for 21. If you go above 21, you're gone. If you get 2 face cards and they're sitting in front of you and you got a 20 out of 21, and you got the chance to stay or say hit me, if you hit you, there's only one card that'll get you to the other, it's an ace. If your inner idiot says hit me, you have an 8% chance of winning. You have a 4% chance of finding the right mutual fund. It's not gonna happen. So what happens for people is they think they've been sold, we're gonna do better, and they might for a year or 2, but what matters, you live off the long term. You don't live off the year or 2, and they just don't do it. Warren Buffett has a bet right now with Protege Partners, which is a group that does hedge funds, and he said, you can pick 5 hedge funds. You can mold the best of them together. I'm gonna own the market, which costs me next to nothing. You're gonna get the hedge funds, which cost a lot. 10-year bet, who's gonna win? Put up $1 million. Right now, they're 6 years into it. Warren Buffett's at 42%, they're at 12%, right?
Wow.
Just crazy. So the second thing is after getting terrible performance, people say, well, fees don't really matter, or they'll tell you it's only 1%. And I ask people all the time, how much are you paying? And they go, I don't know, or they'll say 1%. 1% is called the expense ratio. That's like the edge of the sticker price. If you read that 50-page prospectus in your mutual fund, even one of them has 50 pages, which you won't, you'd have a hard time with a PhD figuring it out. In fact, there's a man named Hilton Smith, I quote in the book, who spent 2 weeks, he's got a doctorate as an economist, took him 2 weeks to go through them all and figure out there are 17 different fees. And Forbes says the average fee is 3.12. Now, if you're watching right now, I'm sure I've lost your brain with all these numbers, so let me make it real for you. 1% versus 3%, big difference.
Huge.
Right? Here's the difference. Just like you grow by compounding like Theodore Johnson did, your fees also compound. And people don't know that when they hear that little number. So if you have 3 people and one gets 1% in fees, 2%, the other in 3%, they all get the same return. They start out with $100,000 at 35. For 30 years, they accumulate to 65 years old, 7% compounded. They all get 7%. The only difference is the fees. And when they go to retire, the person at 1% in fees is gonna have $574,000. $100,000 to $574, not a bad, if they added not another dime, pretty amazing. The person at 3% in fees will have $224,000. 77% less money. If you want to win a race and you have a 100-pound jockey on the back of your horse or you want a 300-pound jockey on the back of your horse, fees at 3% are that. If I said to you, here's a deal, let's do an investment, and here's how I want it to work. You give me the money, you put up all the money, you put up all the risk, I'll put up no money, I'll put up no risk. If you lose, I win, and if you win, I win. And if you win, over the life of the time, I'll get 60% of what you earn. You'd say, I'll never do that in a million years. That's a mutual fund with 3%. It's one of the only industries on earth where they've confused this enough that we don't understand we're overpaying by thousands of percent. You could own the stock market, the S&P 500. You can own a piece of all 500 big companies through like the Vanguard 500. Mm-hmm. And you get the best of all the business, Apple, Exxon, all these companies. And it costs you 0.17. That means less than 0.2%. If you went to a normal mutual fund, you might own the same companies for 3.17. That's like buying a Honda Accord for $20,000 or $350,000 for the same car. If you pay $350,000, you figure out the person next door paid $20,000, so you go crazy. That happens every day with finances because people don't know how to look at this. So when they read the book, that'll never happen to them again.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, there's so much. I could talk to you forever, and I know your team is like, oh my God, we got to get him out of here. But a couple things before we wrap up. First, what we discovered with the all-season strategy and what you were able to inspire Ray, one of the leader of what? The largest hedge fund in the world.
Yes.
It's absolutely incredible.
He's an amazing man. Let me just give it to you really quick. Ray Dalio is his name. Ray heads Bridgewater, which is the largest hedge fund in the world. A hedge fund is where wealthy people often put their money because they can bet up on the market or down and be able to do a lot of things as a hedge fund. And a large hedge fund, a good size one, might be 15 billion, Ray's 160 billion, so he's 10 times the size. To give money to Ray 10 years ago, you had to have a $5 billion net worth and a minimum of $100 million on the first day, or he wouldn't even talk to you. That was 10 years ago. Now, no matter how much money you have, he won't do it because he manages money for China, for countries, for giant pension funds. So I get a chance to meet Ray, and I did 15 hours of prep for that. Just like I want to be able to pitch and catch with him. I was very fortunate, found out that he listened to my tapes and was a fan of my work from years before. And so our 45 minutes went close to that 3-hour mark again. And at the end, I said to him, went back and forth, and he really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it, obviously, learned so much. I said, Ray, I asked this to all these people, if you could never give any of your money to your children, and all you could give them was be a strategy, a plan, a portfolio that they could not only succeed with, but they wouldn't have all that ups and downs that make people get out of the market and lose. I said, what would it be? And he said, my all-weather portfolio. I've already designed it. All my money's in it. My kids' money, all the money that I have for contribution to society is in it. And he said, because I know I'm not going to be here forever, and I need something that's going to work in any market. And he said, I've worked it all the way back to 1925. I've tested it, and it makes money. And he said, I did it for myself for years, and now I do it for my clients. I said, explain it to me. So he explained it to me, and I'd done my homework. I knew a lot about it already. But at the end, I said, okay, Ray, you've really explained this. Brilliant. You're showing me why in 2008, people that had half their money in stocks and they thought they were safe, half their money in bonds, like everybody tells you, a balanced portfolio, they both lost money. He explained why. He explained how you could avoid that. But I said, Ray, you told me everything but the percentages. So it's like, bake this perfect chocolate cake. And he says, bring some chocolate, bring some sugar, use some dairy products, but you're not telling me the amounts. I said, he goes, Tony, that's my secret sauce. And they give me the whole 5 billion, 100 million. I go, I know, but you said you haven't taken money in 10 years. You're not going to take any money. The average person can't do it on their own. Help the average guy out. And I was teasing him, pushing him. And he goes, well, it's complex. I said, but I'll simplify it. He goes, well, there's leverage. I said, design one without leverage. The average person can do 15 minutes a year. And he goes, well, it wouldn't be perfect. I said, your idea of not perfect will be better than anybody else on earth.
Totally.
So he sits there and he starts scratching this thing out for me. And I'm like feeling this vibration in my body. It was just incredible. At the end, it was incredibly generous. We went and tested it, back tested it. So it means you compare it year by year what it did. In reality, not hoping what it'd do, but back testing something for a year or 2 years or 5 years, one thing. We back tested it 75 years, the worst and the most volatile times in our history. And interestingly enough, it's right, 85% of the time it made money. And the few times it didn't, the average loss was 1.6%. The largest loss in 75 years was less than 4%, minus 3.5. And that was 2008 when the market from top to bottom was down 51%. And that's the most of the loss in 75 years, and the average return is just under 10%. And this is something, a bunch of my friends were like, bake this into a business, dude. This is like incredible. And I was like, you know what? I'd love to do that, but this was given in the spirit of free to anybody.
Yes.
So it's there. Somebody can go to the library and get my book and they can just copy the thing down. But it's available to any human being and anybody can put it there. Now, that's not the only strategy there. I have David Swenson's strategies. I have all the best.
Tons.
But his strategy is the smoothest ride. Because the biggest challenge, if you look at the last 30 years or 20 years, 1993 to 2003, the average investor in mutual funds, well, the market did 9.2% per year, really nice, on average. The average mutual fund investor did 2.5%, and that's before taxes. You're going to double your money every 36 years doing something like that. It's not going to happen. You get killed.
Okay. As we wrap, so you're not earning a dime off of this book. No. So tell us all about your passion for making a difference and what happens each and every time someone purchases a copy of this incredible thing, which everyone needs to get.
I'm really proud. I didn't start out to do that, quite frankly, but I was writing the book, and as I mentioned, when I was a kid, we had a Thanksgiving, no money and no food, and somebody came to the door, knocked on the door, and delivered this food, and it was life-changing for me because it wasn't the food, it was that my father had always said, nobody cares about anybody else, He built that belief system into us, and I saw that strangers really care. And so I swore someday I'd do something to give back. So I was 17, I fed 2 families, and the next year, 4 families, and the next 8. I didn't tell anybody, but after the 4th year, I was like, I could use some help. So I got my friends involved, and then my companies, and then it built to 1 million people, and then 2 million people. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've been matching the 2 million my foundation does personally with another 2 million, so we feed 4 million people a year. But while I was writing this, Congress last year passed a new budget that nobody seemed to pay attention to, where they cut food stamps, they don't call it food stamps anymore, but it's food stamps, by $8.7 billion. It basically limited 2 million people from having food. And so I work with all these nonprofit organizations that are already struggling, and it just made me crazy. And I thought, okay, what if I'm working my ass up in this book, but you know what? I could donate all the profits of this book, not a percentage. And then I thought, what if I donate all in advance? Whether I make money in the book, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do it in advance. How many people could I feed? And it was 10 million. And I was like, wow, that excited me. And it just grew a life of its own. As time went by, I started thinking, how could I really get people's attention about it? And so I finally decided that I'm going to feed 50 million. I'm writing the check actually next week. Personally, I'm going to feed 50 million people up front. And in addition to that, I'm working with Feeding America. They're the best hunger relief organization in the United States. And they're going to partner with me to get matching funds so we can feed 100 million people. And it's just exciting. I've fed 42 million people in my life. I'm going to feed more people this year. And so for anybody who gets a book, if I sell 1 million books, 50 meals for every person that's there. If I sell 100 books, it'll be 500,000 meals for that's there. But it doesn't matter. I've done it up front. And I'm not doing it because I'm a good guy. I'm just paying it forward. People forget what a little bit of caring can do for, to inspire or to move somebody. And I don't even know to this day who fed my family that day. But if they're out there, if they're still alive, I hope they see and hear the story and know what's going on. My guess is they passed because I've shared the story many times and no one's volunteered to share what it is. But that person made a giant difference. It wasn't just feeding, it was caring. And that's what I think changes people's lives.
I think that's the thing that I so admire about you. I've been to so many of your events. I will continue to be a supporter, a fan, a friend.
Thank you.
I think you're one of the most incredible human beings in the world, and your heart and your soul shows through in everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're very sweet.
so much for being here. And for everybody, you have got to get your hands on this book. We're going to have links below. We're going to be tweeting and sharing about it. It will change your life, the life of your family. And like I said at the end, there's a beautiful piece about why it's so important for all of us to make a difference. Tony, thank you so much. I love you. I think you're great.
It's so beautiful to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Tony and I would love to hear from you. What's the single biggest insight that you're taking away from today's episode? And more importantly, what's the biggest action you're going to take as a result of all of this goodness? Now, as always, the best conversations happen after the episode over at marieforleo.com, so go there and leave a comment now. Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel, and I would be so appreciative, especially for this one, if you shared it with all your friends. And if you want even more awesome resources to create a business and life that you love, plus some personal insights from me that I only get to talk about in email, come on over to marieforleo.com and make sure you sign up for email updates. Stay on your game and keep going for your dreams, because the world really needs that special gift that only you have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Marie TV.
Can I get a what?
Whoop, whoop. You're getting
Thank you,
thumbs up.
sweetheart. I appreciate that. I'm starting to feel better about myself already.